January 30th, 1944. 0200 hours, 180 feet beneath the Pacific Ocean, southeast of Palau Island. The hull groans. Red emergency lights flicker across the control room of USS Seahorse. Lieutenant Commander Slade Cutter stands in the conning tower, 32 years old, farm muscle gone lean from 3 years of war. 3 torpedoes just ripped through a Japanese transport. 450 men sliding into darkness as the stern breaks away. Now 7 destroyers are turning toward his position. 7 warships. 72 depth charges each. 504 explosions waiting to happen. Cutter has 8 torpedoes left. His batteries are at 40%. His crew hasn't slept in 3 days. The destroyers are charging at 35 knots. Seahorse's maximum submerged speed is 9. The math is simple. He's about to die. Palau's coral reefs are 400 feet below. The surface is 180 feet above. 7 angry warships are converging from every direction. He's in a 3-dimensional kill box with walls made of high explosive. Standard doctrine says, go deep, go quiet, pray the destroyers pass over. Cutter turns Seahorse directly toward the lead destroyer, orders flank speed. This is the story of a man from a small farming town in Illinois who had never seen the ocean until he was 20 years old. A man who became the deadliest submarine hunter in the Pacific Theater. In the next 48 hours, Slade Cutter will survive 127 individual depth charge detonations. He will sink 2 more ships from the same convoy despite being hunted continuously by 7 destroyers. He will surface at night to recharge his batteries while Japanese warships search for him 3 miles away. He will surface in broad daylight 50 miles from a Japanese airbase because his batteries are dying. He will turn the hunters into the hunted. And he can do this because 3 years ago, nobody in the United States Navy wanted him commanding anything. This is how a flute player from Illinois became the man who taught the Imperial Japanese Navy to fear the water. November 1st, 1911. Oswego, Illinois. A farming town where men were measured by how much alfalfa they could harvest, not how many enemy ships they could sink. Slade DeVille Cutter was born to a family that knew loss. His father had been permanently injured playing football years before. The injury never healed right. It changed everything. So when young Slade showed interest in sports, his mother steered him away from contact, away from violence, away from anything that could break him the way football had broken his father. Instead, she gave him a flute. Not just to play, to master, to become something other than what this small town expected. By age 16, Slade Cutter won a national flute competition judged by John Philip Sousa himself. The man who wrote the Marine Corps March sat in that audience and listened to a farm boy from Illinois play like he'd been born to it. When Cutter arrived at the United States Naval Academy in 1931, he listed his vices on his entrance paperwork. Tobacco, swearing, flute. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall, 215 pounds of Illinois farm muscle. The kind of build that doesn't stay invisible for long. His name was Paul Brown. Yes, that Paul Brown. The man who would later have the Cleveland Browns named after him. In 1931, he was the Naval Academy's line coach, and he saw Cutter walking across campus one afternoon. Brown said one sentence on, "You're playing football." Cutter said he'd never played. Brown said, "You start Monday." By 1934, Cutter was an All-American tackle playing both offense and defense back when men didn't leave the field for substitutions, back when football was something closer to controlled combat than sport. December 1st, 1934, Franklin Field, Philadelphia. 79,000 people packed into the stadium to watch the Army-Navy game unfold in ankle-deep mud. Navy hadn't beaten Army in 13 years, 13 years of losing. 13 years of watching Army celebrate while Navy players stood in silence covered in mud and defeat. The field was a swamp. A rainstorm the night before had turned the gridiron into something closer to a rice paddy. Kicking a field goal was borderline impossible. The mud was too deep. The conditions too terrible. Fourth quarter, score 0-0. Navy drives to Army's 20-yard line. Head coach Tommy Hamilton calls for a field goal attempt. The entire stadium knows it won't work. You can feel it in the stands. 79,000 people holding their breath, knowing they're about to witness another year of defeat. Cutter, normally a lineman, steps back to kick. The holder puts the ball down. It immediately sinks 3 inches into the mud. Buried. The holder can barely keep it upright. Cutter kicks it anyway. The ball wobbles through the air like a dying duck. It has no business going straight. The spin is wrong. The trajectory is off. It barely clears the crossbar. The referee signals good. Navy 3, Army 0. Final score. 79,000 people lose their minds. Slade Cutter becomes a national celebrity overnight. Professional boxing promoters offer him contracts. The money would set him up for life. More money than his father ever saw farming alfalfa in Oswego. More money than most men in 1934 could imagine. He turns them all down. Reports to the battleship USS Idaho to serve his country. Because while Cutter was kicking game winners in front of crowds, war was coming. You could feel it if you paid attention. You could see it in the way the world was moving. Japan expanding into China. Germany rearming. The old order crumbling. May 1938. Cutter enters submarine school at Groton, Connecticut. He's never been on a submarine. Most of his classmates wash out within weeks. The psychological pressure of being sealed in a steel tube 300 feet underwater breaks them. The darkness breaks them. The knowledge that if something goes wrong you die slowly breaks them. Cutter graduates top of his class, not because he's fearless, because he understands something they don't. Football taught him that pressure is just another opponent. You don't avoid it, you don't run from it, you learn to work through it. Like playing the flute in front of judges, like kicking a field goal in front of 79,000 people. You establish rhythm, find the beat, execute. In the pressure chamber at Groton, while other men panic at simulated depths of 200 feet, Cutter sits motionless, eyes closed, breathing steady, the rhythm constant as a metronome. Commander Harlan Driscoll, 44 years old, a Montana native who survived submarine duty in World War I, watches through the observation window. He turns to his assistant. That one's not fearless, he's just learned how to control fear. That's more valuable. Cutter graduates, gets assigned to fleet duty, learns his trade on the old S-boats, the submarines from the last war. Slow, cramped, dangerous, even in peacetime. Then December 7th, 1941 happens. Pearl Harbor burns. 2,403 Americans dead. The battleship fleet crippled. The aircraft carriers by pure chance at sea and untouched. 11 days later, December 18th, 1941, Lieutenant Slade Cutter is executive officer of USS Pompano under Commander Lou Parks, heading to the Marshall Islands on America's first submarine war patrol of the Pacific War. They're 200 miles from Pearl Harbor when a U.S. patrol plane spots them, mistakes them for Japanese, calls in dive bombers from USS Enterprise. 3 near-miss bomb strikes rupture Pompano's fuel tanks, oil streams behind them for 40 miles, a giant arrow pointing at their position for every Japanese destroyer in the Pacific. Commander Lou Parks, 38 years old, from Atlanta, with eyes like ice chips, looks at the damage reports, orders them to continue anyway. They reach Wake Island, confirm Japanese occupation. The Marines fought to the last man. The island is gone. Then Parks pushes deeper into enemy waters, to Watcher Atoll. They find a 16,000-ton Japanese transport. Parks attacks at 1,200 yards, close enough that if the torpedoes detonate prematurely, the explosion will kill everyone aboard Pompano. All 4 torpedoes hit. The transport rolls over and sinks in 4 minutes. 800 Japanese soldiers go down with it. Then a Japanese destroyer appears on the horizon, turning toward them. Accelerating, Parks orders down the throat, the most dangerous attack in submarine warfare. You aim your bow directly at a charging destroyer and fire torpedoes at point-blank range. If you miss, the destroyer rams you, cuts you in half. If the torpedoes malfunction, they circle back and kill you. The first 2 torpedoes detonate early, 50 feet from Pompano's bow. The concussion is like being inside a cathedral bell when someone strikes it with a sledgehammer. Men are knocked off their feet. Instruments shatter. The entire submarine rings like a tuning fork. Cutter, standing in the control room, is thrown into the bulkhead. His head hits steel. Blood runs from his scalp down his face. The world tilts. Parks fires 2 more torpedoes, both miss. The destroyer drops 36 depth charges. 1 unseats an engine exhaust valve. The engine room begins to flood. Pompano plunges toward the bottom. 400 feet, 450, 500. Cutter blood, still streaming down his face, coordinates the damage control. Bleeding, dizzy. Working through it the way he worked through the pressure chamber at Groton. Establish rhythm. Find the beat. Blow ballast. Surface. They blow ballast. Surface. Escape barely. Cutter returns to Pearl Harbor, having learned the most important lesson of his life, the lesson that will save him and 46 other men in the years to come. Aggressive action executed perfectly is safer than cautious hesitation. Commander Lou Parks wipes the blood off Cutter's face with a rag. That's lesson number 1. Write it down. Cutter doesn't need to write it down. It's carved into his skull now. Literally, the scar will be there for the rest of his life. October 1943. Cutter is assigned as executive officer of USS Seahorse, a brand new Balao-class submarine under Commander Don McGregor. First patrol, McGregor makes 2 attacks, lets multiple convoys pass unmolested, gets depth charged, ruptures his fuel lines, limps home with nothing to show for it. Admiral Charles Lockwood, Commander Submarine Force Pacific, reviews the patrol report, removes McGregor from command for insufficient aggression. October 20th, 1943. Slade Cutter, age 32, assumes command of USS Seahorse. He meets his crew. 47 men who will spend the next year and a half living in a steel tube 311 feet long and 27 feet wide. Men who will learn to sleep through depth charge attacks. Men who will learn to trust their captain with a completeness most people never experience. Chief Torpedo Man Virgil Digger Graves, 33 years old, Boston, black hair going grey at the temples, wife 7 months pregnant back home, 5'10", built like a barrel. The kind of man who can reload a torpedo tube in complete darkness by feel alone. Lieutenant Fletcher Ashford, 29 years old, Baltimore, Cutter's classmate from Annapolis, cautious by nature, methodical, 6'1", the perfect counterbalance to Cutter's aggression. Everett Sparky Kincaid, 30 years old, Texas, chief engineer, responsible for keeping the batteries charged, the diesel engines running, the electric motors turning, handlebar mustache that would make a rodeo cowboy jealous. These are the men who will follow Cutter into hell. Cutter gathers them in the forward torpedo room on the first day. I know some of you served under Commander McGregor. He was a good officer. Careful. By the book. That's not how I operate. We're going to hunt aggressively. We're going to take risks. Some of you won't like it. If you can't trust me to bring you home, request a transfer now. No questions asked. Silence. Nobody moves. Graves speaks up. Skipper, we heard about Pompano, heard you served under Lou Parks. Heard about the down-the-throat attack. Cutter nods. Then you know what kind of captain I learned from. Yes, sir. We're ready. First patrol, November 1943. Seahorse departs Pearl Harbor. First target, 3 Japanese trawlers off the coast of Japan. Standard doctrine says submerge and torpedo them. Trawlers aren't worth surfacing for. Too small. Too insignificant. Save the torpedoes for bigger targets. Cutter surfaces anyway, uses his 5-inch deck gun and sinks all 3 in 14 minutes. His crew thinks he's insane. They're 200 miles from mainland Japan, exposed on the surface, vulnerable to aircraft. Any minute a Japanese patrol plane could spot them, and that would be the end. Graves whispers to Ashford in the control room. The skipper's out of his mind. Ashford watches Cutter through the periscope. Calm, methodical, focused. No, he's just playing football a different way. 3 days later, night. Seahorse encounters a Japanese convoy, 7 cargo vessels, 4 destroyers. Cutter studies the formation. The destroyers are patrolling a box pattern around the cargo ships. 2,000 yards out, overlapping sonar coverage, textbook defense. Ashford plots a standard approach. Recommend we wait for the convoy to pass, then attack from astern. Surface attack after dark. Cutter shakes his head. We're going in now. Sir, they'll hear us. Not if we're quiet enough. Cutter maneuvers Seahorse to periscope depth, times the destroyer patrol pattern, waits for the gap, then threads the needle, slips between two destroyers at 4 knots, silent running, every man holding his breath. Seahorse penetrates the defensive screen, now they're inside, surrounded by enemy warships, but the destroyers are looking outward, not inward, never expecting a submarine to be inside their formation. Cutter closes to 800 yards from the nearest cargo ship. Bearing, mark, range, mark, angle on the bow, mark. Ashford calls out the firing solution. His hands are shaking slightly. They're 800 yards from a target with 4 destroyers circling them. Solution ready, Captain. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3, fire 4. 4 torpedoes leave Seahorse. Straight runners, closing on the target, 50 seconds. 3 torpedoes hit. The cargo ship breaks apart. 6,000 tons, sinks in 2 minutes. The destroyers converge, but Cutter has already reversed course, slipping back through the gap in their patrol pattern, threading the needle in reverse. By the time the destroyers reach the attack position, Seahorse is 2 miles away, submerged. Silent. The destroyers drop depth charges randomly. Hoping to get lucky, they don't. Seahorse escapes. Over the next 6 weeks, Cutter develops his signature tactic. Penetrate the screen. Attack from inside. Escape before coordination. It's insane. It's brilliant. It works. He sinks a troop transport carrying 900 Japanese soldiers. The explosion ignites fuel tanks. The ship becomes a floating funeral pyre. Visible for 30 miles, he sinks a tanker. 8,000 tons of fuel oil that will never reach Japanese warships. He sinks supply ships, ammunition ships. Every target weakens Japan's ability to defend the islands America will soon invade. By December 12, 1943, Seahorse returns to Pearl Harbor. 9 Japanese ships sunk, 48,000 tons, 53 days of hunting. The crew is exhausted, filthy. They haven't showered in 7 weeks. The submarine smells like diesel fuel, sweat and fear. But they're alive, all 47 of them. Admiral Lockwood is standing on the dock when Seahorse ties up. He's read the patrol report via radio transmission, read it twice. Couldn't believe it the first time. Cutter climbs down from the bridge, salutes. Lockwood returns the salute, stares at Cutter for a long moment. Commander, you penetrated a convoy's defensive screen at periscope depth in daylight. Yes, sir. That's either the bravest thing I've ever heard or the craziest. Worked, sir, Lockwood laughs. Can't help it. 9 ships, 48,000 tons, first patrol as captain. You just set a record. He hands Cutter a small velvet box. Navy Cross, you earned it. And you're going back out in 6 weeks. We need more captains like you. Cutter opens the box. The medal is beautiful. Blue ribbon, bronze cross. He's seen them before, on other officers. Never thought he'd have one. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, thank your crew. They're the ones who trusted you enough to follow you into that convoy. That night, Cutter writes a letter to Francis, his wife back in Annapolis. Fran, first patrol is done. We did good work. The crew is solid. I think we can make a real difference out here. I miss you. I'll be home when this is over, I promise. He doesn't mention the 9 ships, doesn't mention the Navy Cross, doesn't mention that he charged into a defended convoy at periscope depth. Some things are easier not to explain. January 1944, Seahorse's second patrol. Waters off the Marianas. Cutter refines his tactics, studies how destroyers hunt, how convoys defend, where the gaps are, how to exploit them. He learns that destroyer sonar has a blind spot directly beneath the ship, learns that depth charges can't be dropped within 200 yards of the destroyer without risking damage to the attacker, learns that most destroyer captains follow doctrine religiously, which means they're predictable. Over 8 weeks, Seahorse stalks the sea lanes between Japan and the southern islands. Cutter develops an almost supernatural ability to read convoy formations, to see the patterns, to find the gaps. He sinks a transport, 5,000 tons, 2 freighters, 14,000 tons combined, a tanker, 7,000 tons of fuel oil, 4 ships, 26,000 tons, no casualties to Seahorse's crew. He returns to Pearl Harbor in March 1944. Admiral Lockwood awards him his second Navy Cross. The citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism and distinguished service in action as commanding officer of USS Seahorse during the second war patrol of that submarine, Commander Cutter demonstrated exceptional tactical skill and aggressive leadership in sinking 4 enemy vessels totaling 26,000 tons despite heavy enemy opposition." The other submarine captains start calling him the Shark, not because he's ruthless, because he never stops moving, never stops hunting. The moment he sinks one target, he's already searching for the next. But Lockwood sees something else in the patrol reports. Cutter is getting more aggressive, taking bigger risks, pushing closer to the edge. The penetrations are deeper, the escapes narrower, the battery margins thinner. Lockwood calls him to his office. "Commander, you're doing outstanding work, but you're going to get yourself killed." Cutter's answer is simple. "Sir, better to die attacking than to survive by hiding." Lockwood doesn't argue, doesn't try to rein him in, because he knows the truth. The Pacific needs more cutters, not fewer. Third patrol, "You're going to Palau. Intelligence says there's major convoy activity, high-value targets, reinforcements heading to the Marianas before we invade." Cutter salutes. "When do I leave? Some January 6th. You have 4 weeks to refit. Spend time with your crew. They've earned it." Cutter nods, but he doesn't rest. He studies the charts, studies the convoy routes, studies the intelligence reports, learning everything he can about Palau, about the defenses, about the patterns, because this third patrol will be different. This will be the hunt that changes everything, the 80-hour chase that redefines submarine warfare. The pursuit that proves aggressive action isn't just effective, it's survival. Cutter had proven himself. 13 ships, 74,000 tons, 2 Navy Crosses, 4 months of hunting in waters the Japanese considered their own. But the real test was coming, a test that would last 80 hours, 3 days and 8 hours of continuous pursuit. A chase that would prove the most dangerous place during a fight isn't away from the enemy, it's right in the middle of them. January 6, 1944, Seahorse departs Pearl Harbor for her third war patrol. Destination Palau Islands, 550 miles east of the Philippines. Intelligence reports indicate major Japanese convoy activity. Tokyo is desperate to reinforce their garrisons before the Americans invade. Desperate men make mistakes. Cutter plans to exploit every single one. He has 4 objectives: sink supply ships, sink troop transports, sink tankers, sink anything that moves. The crew knows what's coming. They've been with Cutter long enough now. They know he doesn't wait for opportunities, he creates them. They know that when other submarine captains would break contact and retreat, Cutter pushes forward. They know they might not come home. By January 21st, Seahorse has already killed 2 freighters near Truk. 12,000 tons of supplies that will never reach Japanese soldiers. 12,000 tons of ammunition, food, fuel, medicine that will never reinforce the garrisons Americans will soon assault. Then, ultra-intelligence decoded Japanese radio traffic provides Cutter with a gift. A large convoy departing Palau, heading north, carrying reinforcements for the Marianas. 3 freighters, heavy escort, high-value targets. Cutter positions Seahorse 30 miles southeast of Palau. Waits. January 28, 1944, 14:30 hours, periscope depth. Cutter sees them. 3 freighters exiting Palau Harbor, surrounded by 5 escort destroyers and 2 submarine chasers. The convoy is moving at 14 knots in a defensive formation specifically designed to prevent submarine attacks. The freighters are in the center, a tight cluster, escorts forming a moving perimeter 2,000 yards out, zigzagging every 8 minutes, changing course, changing speed, never predictable, never vulnerable. Standard doctrine for this situation is clear. Wait for nightfall, surface attack. Use the darkness, use surprise. Cutter refuses to wait. He tracks them for 32 straight hours, staying submerged, following at maximum battery draining speed. Watching through the periscope for an opening that never comes, his crew is exhausted. They've been at battle stations for a day and a half, sleep in shifts, eat cold food, the air is getting stale. The carbon dioxide levels rising. Men are getting headaches, getting sluggish. His batteries are at 35%. He's burning through his battery reserve faster than he can recharge. Every hour submerged at high speed drains power that takes 3 hours on the surface to restore. The math doesn't work. He's running out of time. Everett Sparky Kincaid, the chief engineer from Texas with the handlebar mustache, comes to the conning tower. His face is grey. He hasn't slept in 40 hours. "Skipper, we need to surface and charge batteries. We need to do it now or we're dead in the water." Cutter keeps his eye pressed to the periscope, watching the convoy, counting the zigzag pattern. 7 minutes 40 seconds. Turn. 7 minutes 30 seconds. Turn. 7 minutes 50 seconds. Not quite regular, but close. "We surface when they're dead." Kincaid wants to argue, wants to explain the engineering, the electrical load, the battery chemistry, the fact that if they drain the batteries below 20%, they might not have enough power to dive in an emergency. But he's learned, you don't argue with Cutter, you trust him, or you transfer off Seahorse. Kincaid goes back to the engine room, watches the battery gauges drop. 34%, 33%, 32%. Hour 32 of the pursuit, January 30th, 0200 hours. The convoy changes course slightly. One escort destroyer moves 200 yards out of position to investigate a radar contact. Probably a whale, probably nothing. For 90 seconds, there's a gap. Cutter sees it. "All ahead flank, come right to course 270. Seahorse accelerates. The electric motors whine. The battery drain accelerates. Kincaid watches the gauges plummet. 31%, 29%, 27%. Cutter closes to 1,400 yards, aims at the largest freighter, Tokumaru, 2,747 tons, carrying 450 Japanese troops bound for the Marianas. 450 men who will defend beaches against American Marines, 450 men who will kill Americans if they reach their destination. Bearing, mark. Range, mark. Angle on the bow, mark. Lieutenant Fletcher Ashford calls out the firing solution. His voice is steady despite the fact that they're about to announce their position to 7 warships. "Solution ready, Captain." "Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. 3 torpedoes leave Seahorse, each one a Mark 14 torpedo, 3,000 pounds, 643-pound Torpex warhead. 46 knots. They leave trails of bubbles, straight runners, closing on Tokumaru like arrows. 40 seconds. All 3 torpedoes hit. The first blows Tokumaru's stern completely off, just rips it away. The back third of the ship separates and begins to sink independently. The second torpedo detonates in her engine room. The explosion is catastrophic. Boilers rupture. Steam erupts. Men are cooked alive in superheated vapor. The third hits amidships and ignites her fuel bunkers. She goes down in 90 seconds. Bow first. Vertical, like a finger pointing at heaven. 450 men sliding into the Pacific, screaming. Most of them can't swim. Japanese military training didn't emphasize swimming. Why would it? Japan is an island nation. Everyone grows up around water. But growing up around water doesn't mean you can swim in it when you're wearing a uniform and boots and the ship beneath you is sinking faster than you can comprehend. 450 men drown in the darkness. Cutter watches through the periscope until Tokumaru disappears beneath the surface. Then he gives the order every man on Seahorse knew was coming. "Take her deep, rig for depth charge, rig for silent running." Every destroyer in the convoy heard the torpedoes launch. They heard them hit. They saw Tokumaru explode and sink. They know exactly where Seahorse is. Within 200 yards, they have a firing solution that doesn't require sonar. Seahorse drops. 200 feet, 250, 300, 350, 400 feet, just above the coral reef floor, at her rated crush depth of 400 feet. The hull groans under the pressure. Every rivet, a potential failure point. 7 destroyers converge on the attack position. They form a circle, 3,000 yards in diameter. Seahorse in the center. Then they begin dropping depth charges in a coordinated pattern designed to force submarines toward the middle, toward the concentrated explosions, toward death. The Japanese have been refining this tactic for 2 years. They've sunk American submarines with it. USS Grunion, USS Amberjack, USS Grampus, boats that went down with all hands, boats that left widows and orphans and empty chairs at dinner tables back home. The first depth charge detonates 200 feet above Seahorse. The concussion is immediate, violent. Everyone on board is slammed into the bulkheads. It's not a sound, it's a physical presence, a giant fist squeezing the submarine. Light bulbs shatter, glass rains down. The gyro compass spins wildly, useless. Virgil Digger Graves, the chief torpedo man from Boston, is thrown across the torpedo room. His shoulder hits the reload rack. Something cracks. He doesn't know if it's the rack or his collarbone. Doesn't matter. He grips the rack and holds on. In his pocket is a photograph. His wife. 7 months pregnant in the picture. 8 months now. Maybe 9. Maybe she's already given birth. Maybe he's a father and doesn't know it. Maybe his child will grow up never knowing him. He pulls out his rosary, starts praying. Hail Mary, full of grace. Cutter orders silent running, all non-essential systems off, no talking, no movement. The air conditioning stops. The temperature starts to rise. Within minutes, it's 95 degrees. Within an hour, it will be over 100. Seahorse drifts at 2 knots, barely controllable. The crew can feel her wanting to sink. The water pressure at 400 feet is enormous, 178 pounds per square inch. The hull is rated for it, but just barely. Every groan, every creak, every sound makes men wonder if this is the moment the steel fails. Second depth charge, 150 feet away, closer. The hull protests like a living thing in pain. Cork insulation rains from the ceiling. A hydraulic line ruptures. Oil sprays across the control room. Lieutenant Ashford clamps it off with his bare hands. The oil is hot. It burns. He doesn't let go. In the conning tower, Cutter realizes what's happening. The destroyers aren't dropping charges randomly. They're listening with sonar, tracking Seahorse's position, then dropping charges in a shrinking pattern. They're herding Seahorse toward the center, toward the kill zone. It's brilliant tactics. Patient, methodical, professional. Cutter has fought professionals before. He understands something fundamental about professionals. They follow doctrine. They do what they've been trained to do. And doctrine says a submarine under depth charge attack goes deep, goes quiet, and tries to slip away. So Cutter does the opposite. All ahead flank, come right to course 320, make your depth 500 feet. The men in the control room stare at him. Ashford, his hands still clamped on the hydraulic line, oil dripping down his arms, says what everyone is thinking. Skipper flank speed will let them hear us from 5 miles away, and 500 feet is below crush depth. Cutter keeps his eyes on the depth gauge. I know. Graves in the torpedo room hears the order relayed, hears the electric motors spin up, knows what it means. The captain is charging toward a destroyer, toward a warship dropping depth charges. He whispers to the torpedo man next to him. Young kid, 19 years old, from Nebraska, name is William Hodges, 1st War Patrol. Sir's lost his mind, but Hodges understands something Graves doesn't yet. No, he knows something we don't. Seahorse accelerates to 9 knots, the maximum submerged speed, the electric motors whine, the battery drain is catastrophic. Kincaid in the engine room watches the gauges. 24%. 22%. 20%. They're going to run out of battery power before they run out of ocean. Sonar tracks the destroyer's propeller noise, the sound of 4 screws churning water at high speed, the sound of a warship moving to ram position, 800 yards, 600 yards, 400 yards. The destroyer hears Seahorse's cavitation noise, the sound of propeller blades moving through water at high speed. Unmistakable, impossible to hide. The destroyer turns to ram. Standard anti-submarine doctrine. If you know where the submarine is and you're close enough, don't bother with depth charges. Just ram it. Cut it in half with your bow. Spill its crew into the ocean, 300 yards. Cutter's voice is calm, like he's ordering breakfast. Emergency deep. Make your depth 500 feet, 10-degree down angle. Seahorse's bow tilts down. The submarine plunges 420 feet, 450 feet, 480 feet, 500 feet, 60 feet below her rated crush depth. The pressure at 500 feet is 222 pounds per square inch. The hull was designed for 178. The difference doesn't sound like much, 44 pounds. But spread across the entire surface area of the submarine, it's hundreds of tons of additional force. The hull sounds like it's screaming, a high-pitched groan, metal stressed beyond its design limits, rivets popping, seams weeping, tiny streams of water shooting through gaps in the plating. Men look up at the ceiling, at the walls, wondering which rivet will fail first, wondering if they'll feel it when the hull implodes, wondering if it will be quick. Cutter watches the fathometer, watches the destroyer's position, counting silently. 1, 2, 3. Hold position. 4, 5, 6. Now. Seahorse passes directly beneath the destroyer at 200 feet separation. The destroyer drops 6 depth charges. All 6 detonate 300 feet above Seahorse. Cutter's gamble worked. Destroyers can't drop depth charges directly beneath themselves. The explosions would rupture their own hulls, would sink them. The safest place during a depth charge attack is directly under the attacker. But now Cutter has a new problem. He's at 500 feet, 60 feet below crush depth. With 6 other destroyers closing in, his batteries are at 18%. He can't surface, can't run, can't hide. So he stops. All stop. Neutral buoyancy, 0 propeller rotation. Seahorse becomes a 2,400-ton steel statue on the ocean floor. For 40 minutes, no one moves. The temperature in the submarine climbs to 105 degrees. Men are soaked with sweat. The air is thick, humid, hard to breathe. The carbon dioxide levels are rising. Headaches worsen. Some men feel nauseous. The destroyers circle above, listening. Their sonar pings echo through the hull, each ping a reminder, each ping saying, "We know you're here. We're going to find you. We're going to kill you." Ping, ping, ping. Graves clutches his rosary tighter. The beads are slick with sweat. He's on his 3rd decade. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. In the engine room, Kincaid watches a pressure gauge. A tiny leak in a steam line. Nothing critical, but it's getting worse. The pressure at 500 feet is making it worse. If it ruptures completely, the steam will fill the compartment. Will cook everyone in the engine room alive. He wraps a rag around it, holds it, inhales for 4 counts, holds, exhales for 4 counts. The rhythm keeps him calm. In the control room, Ashford's hands are still on the hydraulic line. The oil has stopped spraying, but if he lets go, it might start again. So he doesn't let go. His hands have gone numb. He can't feel his fingers anymore. Cutter stands in the conning tower, motionless, watching the depth gauge, watching the inclinometer, making tiny adjustments to maintain neutral buoyancy at 500 feet. He's counting too, not prayers, timing. He's counting the destroyer patrol pattern, how long they circle, how long they listen, how long before they assume Seahorse is dead. Professional submariners know this. There's a window. After you go silent, there's a window where the enemy assumes you're dead or gone. They don't give up immediately, but they don't search forever. Fuel is limited. Time is limited. They have a convoy to escort. The window for this pattern is typically 45 to 60 minutes. Cutter is counting. At hour 6 of the attack, the destroyers make a mistake. They assume Seahorse is dead. They move to rejoin the convoy. Cutter waits 20 more minutes, listening to the propeller noise fade, listening to the sonar pings grow distant. Then he gives the order. Prepare to surface. Lookouts to the conning tower. Gun crews stand by. It's 0800 hours, broad daylight. Surfacing in daylight 50 miles from a Japanese airbase with 7 destroyers within radar range is suicide. The risk means nothing to him. His batteries are at 11%. If he doesn't charge now, Seahorse becomes a tomb. They'll drift until the batteries die completely. Then they'll settle on the bottom. 500 feet down, the crew will have about 12 hours of air. Then they'll suffocate, slowly, in the darkness. That's not how Cutter plans to die. Surface, surface, surface. Seahorse blows ballast, rises, the pressure decreases, 400 feet, 300, 200, 100. She breaks the surface. The hatch is open. Fresh air pours in. Men gasp. The air in the submarine has been recycled so many times it barely qualifies as breathable. The fresh air is like a drug, like being born again. Cutter climbs to the bridge. The sun is blinding. The ocean is calm. Beautiful. Doesn't care about the war. Doesn't care about the men who just died. Doesn't care about the men who might die in the next few minutes if a Japanese patrol plane spots them. Start the diesel engines. Commence battery charge. Radar watch. Scan for aircraft and surface contacts. The diesel engines roar to life. The sound is impossibly loud after 6 hours of silence. The batteries begin to charge. Slowly. Painfully slowly. It will take 3 hours to get back to 80%. 3 hours on the surface. 3 hours exposed. The radar operator scans the horizon. Contact. Bearing 340. Range 30 miles. Multiple surface contacts, probably the convoy. The convoy. Still heading north. Still carrying reinforcements. Still carrying supplies. 1 freighter sunk. 2 remaining. Graves climbs to the bridge. His shoulder is definitely broken. He can barely move his arm. But he needs air. Needs to see the sky. He stands next to Cutter. Skipper, we should break contact. We got one. That's a victory. Let's go home. Cutter watches the horizon. The convoy is over the curve of the earth. Invisible, but it's there. 2 freighters. Thousands of tons of supplies. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers. We're not done, Graves wants to argue, wants to explain that they almost died, that the hull was groaning at 500 feet, that the batteries are nearly dead, that the crew is exhausted, that they've done enough. But he knows Cutter. Aye, sir. 45 minutes later, batteries at 42% radar picks up the convoy again, still heading north, 30 miles away. Cutter gives the order. Secure from battery charge, prepare to dive. Set course to intercept. For the next 48 hours, Cutter tracks that same convoy. He surfaces at night, charges batteries, submerges at dawn, follows. The destroyers know he's there. They keep doubling back, searching, dropping random depth charges, trying to flush him out. Cutter stays just outside detection range, 3 miles behind, sometimes 4. He's learned their patrol pattern, learned their search doctrine. He knows when they'll turn back, knows when they'll give up, knows when they'll assume he's gone. He's patient now. No rush, no desperation, just methodical stalking. The crew rotates through battle stations, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, cold meals, no hot food. The smell in the submarine is overwhelming. 47 men who haven't showered in days, diesel fuel, battery acid, sweat, fear. On the second day, Ashford approaches Cutter in the wardroom. Skipper, the men are exhausted. We've been at this for 60 hours. We need rest, real rest. Mr. Cutter is studying charts, plotting the convoy's course, calculating intercept points. We rest when they're dead. Ashford knows there's no point arguing, but he has to try. Sir, what if we don't get another shot? What if the weather turns? What if they reach port? We've already sunk one. That's a success. Cutter looks up from the charts. Fletcher, how many Marines do you think are going to assault Saipan? Ashford doesn't know. Hasn't thought about it. I don't know, sir. Thousands. Try 70,000, 2 Marine divisions, and every Japanese soldier on those remaining freighters is going to be shooting at them. Every bullet on those ships is going to kill Americans, every artillery shell, every mortar round. So no one freighter isn't success. Success is when those supplies are on the bottom of the ocean where they can't kill Americans. Ashford nods, understands, goes back to the control room, tells the crew what the captain said. The exhaustion doesn't go away. But the purpose clarifies. February 1st, 1944, 0300 hours. The convoy enters the Luzon Strait. the water passage between Taiwan and the Philippines. The water here is shallower, only 600 feet, which gives destroyers an advantage. Less room for submarines to maneuver, less room to hide, but it also means the convoy has less room to maneuver. Cutter closes to 2,000 yards. Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 5, Fire 6, Fire 7, Fire 8. 8 torpedoes. The last of his forward tubes, aimed at the 2 remaining freighters, spread pattern, overlapping, at least one should hit each target. The torpedoes run, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, 60 seconds, all 8 miss. The destroyers charge. Cutter fires his last 2 torpedoes from the stern tubes, then orders emergency deep. Make your depth 500 feet, rig for depth charge, all ahead flank. The 2 stern torpedoes run true, both hit Tose Maru, 4,041 tons, carrying gasoline drums, 5,055-gallon drums of aviation fuel bound for Japanese airfields. The explosion is visible for 30 miles. Tose Maru doesn't sink. She detonates. The entire ship becomes a fireball. The blast wave capsizes one of the submarine chasers. Men on the destroyers 3 miles away feel the heat on their faces. The second freighter, damaged but still afloat, limps away, trailing oil, listing. She'll make it to port, but she'll be in dry dock for 6 months. The supplies she carries won't reach the front. The destroyers drop 55 depth charges over the next 4 hours. Seahorse survives all of them. At hour 80 of the chase, 3 days and 8 hours, Cutter finally gives the order. Break contact, set course for Pearl Harbor. Batteries 9%, torpedoes 0. Depth charges survived 127. Enemy ships sunk from this single convoy 3. Japanese troops killed 1,200. American Marines who won't die on Saipan's beaches because reinforcements never arrived. Unknown. Unknowable. But real. Cutter had survived the impossible. But he wasn't done. In the next 10 minutes, you'll learn what happened when Seahorse limped back to Pearl Harbor. You'll learn what Admiral Lockwood said when he saw the patrol report. You'll learn what the crew of Seahorse told other submariners about serving under Cutter. And you'll learn the final lesson that Slade Cutter taught the Imperial Japanese Navy. That the most dangerous submarine in the Pacific wasn't the one with the most torpedoes. It was the one commanded by a man who refused to stop hunting. February 16, 1944, Pearl Harbor. Seahorse surfaces at the submarine base. The hull is battered. Paint scorched off in places from near-miss explosions. Dents in the superstructure, a forest of antennas bent at odd angles. She looks like she's been through a war. Because she has. Admiral Charles Lockwood is standing on the dock when Seahorse ties up. He's read the patrol report via radio transmission. Read it twice. Couldn't believe it the first time. Cutter climbs down from the bridge. Salutes. Lockwood returns the salute. Stares at Cutter for a long moment. How the hell are you still alive? Cutter shrugs. Farm boy gesture, completely at odds with what he's just accomplished. They kept missing, sir. Lockwood laughs, can't help it. The sheer audacity of the understatement. Missing, right. Come with me, Commander, we need to talk. In Lockwood's office, the Admiral spreads out the patrol report. Charts, plots, timeline. 80 hours of pursuit annotated in Ashford's precise handwriting. You tracked a convoy for 3 days, survived 127 depth charges, sank 3 heavily escorted ships, surfaced in daylight within 50 miles of a Japanese airbase, and your explanation is they kept missing. Yes, sir. Commander Cutter, I'm giving you your 2nd Navy Cross for this patrol, 3rd overall, and I'm asking you to brief the other submarine captains on your tactics. Cutter's presentation to the other commanders lasts 6 minutes. His advice, get close, shoot straight, don't run until you have to. One commander, a veteran of 8 patrols, asks the question everyone is thinking. What if you're surrounded by destroyers? Cutter's answer becomes legend in the submarine force. Then you're close enough. Within 2 weeks, 3 other submarine commanders attempt similar extended convoy pursuits. 2 succeed, USS Tang under Richard O'Kane, USS Harder under Samuel Dealey. Both rack up impressive kill counts using variations of Cutter's aggressive tactics. One fails, USS Scorpion is sunk with all hands attempting to penetrate a convoy's defensive screen. 42 men dead, 42 families receiving telegrams, 42 funerals. The lesson is clear. Cutter's tactics work for Cutter, but they require a specific kind of nerve that can't be taught, can't be trained. Either you have it or you don't. Either you can work through the fear or you can't. April 8, 1944. Seahorse's 4th War Patrol, waters off Guam. Cutter encounters a 15-ship Japanese convoy heading towards Saipan, reinforcing the garrison before the U.S. invasion. The convoy is protected by 9 destroyers, the largest escort screen Cutter has ever seen. Standard doctrine: report position, wait for other submarines to arrive, coordinate a wolfpack attack, multiple boats, multiple angles, overwhelm the defenses. Cutter attacks immediately. He fires 2 torpedoes at the converted submarine tender Aratama Maru, 6,584 tons, loaded with ammunition and replacement torpedoes for Japanese submarines. Both torpedoes hit. Aratama Maru doesn't just sink, she explodes. The ammunition cargo detonates in a chain reaction. The blast wave is so powerful it ruptures the hulls of 2 nearby freighters. They begin taking on water, will sink within hours even though they weren't directly hit. Aratama Maru drifts onto Guam's coral reefs. A total loss, 6,584 tons of supplies gone. Irreplaceable. 9 destroyers converge on Seahorse's position. Cutter goes deep, but stays in the area, doesn't run, doesn't retreat, just goes silent and waits. 12 hours later, after the destroyers assume he's gone, Cutter surfaces at night, reloads torpedo tubes, and attacks the same convoy again. He sinks Mimasaka Maru, 4,667 tons. Then on April the 20th, while serving as lifeguard submarine for U.S. carrier airstrikes on Saipan, submarines would position themselves to rescue downed pilots. Cutter spots something unexpected. Japanese submarine I-174 on the surface, 1,800 yards away. It's the submariner's nightmare scenario. 2 submarines, both surfaced, both vulnerable. Whoever fires first lives. Whoever hesitates dies. Cutter fires 2 torpedoes, both hit. I-174 sinks in 40 seconds, becoming one of only 7 Japanese submarines sunk by American submarines during the entire war. April 27th, Seahorse finds another convoy 45 miles west of Saipan. Cutter sinks Akikawa Maru, 244 tons. 3 torpedoes, total for the 4th Patrol 5 ships, 18,459 tons. Admiral Lockwood awards Cutter his 3rd Navy Cross for this patrol, 4th overall. The citation notes, Commander Cutter's aggressive leadership and tactical brilliance were instrumental in preventing Japanese reinforcement of the Marianas, directly contributing to the success of U.S. amphibious operations. Cutter's response to receiving the medal, "We just did our job." But the truth is more complex than that. Cutter isn't just sinking ships. He's preventing those ships from delivering troops, ammunition, and fuel to Japanese forces fighting American Marines. Every transport he sinks means 500 fewer enemy soldiers on Saipan's beaches. Every tanker he destroys means Japanese aircraft can't fly as many sorties. Every ammunition ship he sends to the bottom means Japanese artillery can't fire as many shells at advancing Marines. By June 1944, when U.S. forces invade Saipan, Japanese commanders report critical shortages of ammunition and fuel, shortages directly caused by submarines like Seahorse. June 15, 1944. Cutter is patrolling the Philippine Sea when he spots smoke on the horizon. He closes to investigate. Identifies the largest Japanese naval formation he's ever seen. 6 aircraft carriers, 4 battleships, 5 heavy cruisers, dozens of destroyers, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's main battle fleet, heading to stop the American invasion of Saipan. Cutter can't attack. There are too many escorts, too many warships. Even he knows when he's outgunned. But he gets off a contact report to Admiral Raymond Spruance commanding the U.S. 5th Fleet. Spruance redirects his carriers to intercept. The result is the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. U.S. naval aviators shoot down 330 Japanese aircraft and sink 3 carriers. Ozawa's fleet retreats. Never again poses a serious threat. Cutter's role in the battle is a footnote in the history books. One line, contact report from USS Seahorse. But without that contact report, Spruance wouldn't have known where Ozawa was. The Japanese fleet might have caught the American amphibious forces during the landing, might have slaughtered thousands of Marines in the water. One submarine, one contact report, thousands of lives saved. July 19, 1944, Seahorse completes her 5th patrol. In 4 patrols under Cutter's command, Seahorse has sunk 19 Japanese ships totaling over 100,000 tons, the second highest total of any submarine commander in the Pacific. Behind only Richard O'Kane in USS Tang, Cutter receives his 4th Navy Cross, one for each patrol. Only 5 U.S. submariners earned 4 Navy Crosses during World War II. Cutter is one of them. He's reassigned to Portsmouth Naval Shipyard to take command of USS Requin, a brand new submarine. His wife, Frances, sponsors the ship at her commissioning on April the 28th, 1945. Requin arrives at Pearl Harbor on July 30th, 1945, ready for her first combat patrol. 14 days later, Japan surrenders. Slade Cutter never fires another torpedo in anger. August 15th, 1945. The war is over. On USS Requin moored at Pearl Harbor, Slade Cutter stands on the bridge and watches the celebration. Sailors pouring into the streets of Honolulu, kissing strangers, dancing, crying. Cutter goes to his cabin, writes a letter to Frances. "Fran, it's over. I'm coming home. I'm sorry it took so long." He doesn't mention the 19 ships, doesn't mention the 4 Navy Crosses, just "I'm coming home." Lieutenant Fletcher Ashford finds him an hour later. "Skipper, you coming up to celebrate?" "In a minute." Ashford understands. "Sir, we did good work, saved a lot of lives." Cutter seals the letter, stands. "Fletcher, you're going to get your own command. You're going to be a good captain, better than me probably, more careful, more by the book. And that's fine, the war doesn't need my kind anymore." They go up to the bridge together. Toast the end. Toast the men who didn't make it home. But Cutter's mind is elsewhere. He's thinking about the 450 men who drowned when Tokumaru went down. Thinking about whether any of them had wives. Children. War doesn't have clean edges. Cutter killed over 1,200 Japanese sailors and soldiers. Did it methodically, without hesitation, and he'd do it again because every Japanese soldier who drowned was a soldier who didn't shoot an American Marine. The math is brutal, but it's real. After the war, Cutter commands the heavy cruiser USS Northampton. It's peacetime Navy now. The thing he's best at, hunting convoys, making split-second decisions under fire, isn't needed anymore. In 1958, he's assigned as athletic director of the Naval Academy. Returns to Annapolis, where he kicked that field goal 24 years earlier. At the Academy, he's more famous for the football career than the submarine service. Most midshipmen know him as the guy who beat Army in 1934. Some of the older instructors know about the submarines. They'll see Cutter in the hallway and nod. A different kind of respect, but for most people he's the football guy. Cutter doesn't mind. Easier than talking about the war. In 1965 he retires, rank captain. He was never promoted to admiral. The politics required for flag rank, he never learned to play that game. Never wanted to. He moves to Annapolis, lives quietly with Frances. In the late 1990s, Cutter develops Parkinson's disease. The tremors start in his right hand, the hand that gripped the periscope. Slowly it spreads. Frances helps him. She's in her 80s now, but she helps him button his shirts, helps him cut his food. Doesn't complain. They move to Ginger Cove, a retirement community in Annapolis. Cutter spends his days reading, watching the water, remembering. Sometimes other residents ask about his service. See the 4 Navy Cross citations framed on his wall. What did you do to earn 4 of those? Cutter's answer is always the same. Submarine duty, Pacific Theater, we sank some ships. They press for details. He doesn't give them. The stories belong to the men who died now. June 9th, 2005. Slade. DeVille Cutter dies of heart failure at Ginger Cove Retirement Community. He is 93 years old. Frances is with him at the end, holding his hand. She's been holding that hand for 67 years. His last words are to her. Thank you for waiting. She knows what he means. Thank you for waiting through the war patrols. Thank you for waiting through the nightmares. Thank you for waiting through the silence. I'd wait forever, she tells him. He dies 2 hours later. The funeral is at the United States Naval Academy Cemetery. Military honors, flag-draped coffin, rifle salute, taps. A few dozen people attend, mostly veterans, some Naval Academy staff. Fletcher Ashford is there, now 90 years old. Retired as a rear admiral, he flew in from California specifically for the funeral. After the ceremony, a reporter approaches him. Can you tell me about Commander Cutter? What kind of man was he? Ashford thinks about 80 hours of hunting, about 127 depth charges, about the time Cutter surfaced in daylight with batteries at 11% because the alternative was death. He was the kind of man who understood that the safest place during a fight isn't away from danger, it's right in the middle of it, dictating terms, making the enemy react to you instead of the other way around. The reporter writes this down, doesn't understand. Anything else? Ashford looks at the grave. The headstone is simple. Slade D. Cutter Captain, United States Navy, 1911 to 2005. 4 Navy crosses. Yes, one more thing. He saved my life. Saved all our lives, not just from the Japanese, from ourselves, from our fear. He taught us that you don't wait for the mud to dry, you kick through it. The story runs the next day. 4 paragraphs. Page 7. The headline reads, Naval Academy football hero dies at 93. No mention of the 19 ships. No mention of the 80-hour hunt. Just football hero dies. There are 2 ways to tell this story. The first version is the legend. Slade Cutter, superhuman submarine commander, fearlessly charged into impossible situations and emerged victorious through sheer courage and tactical brilliance. That version makes a good story, makes Cutter seem larger than life. The second version is the documented record. Cutter was a methodical tactician who calculated risk with mathematical precision, who trained himself to work through fear the same way he worked through pressure playing the flute, who understood that aggressive action when executed correctly was statistically safer than passive defense. He wasn't fearless, he was disciplined. Both versions are true, both are remarkable. But here's what matters. Here's the lesson that transcends submarine warfare and world wars and depth charges. Slade Cutter understood that the most dangerous moment in any battle isn't when your enemy charges you, it's when you hesitate to charge them. Every time Cutter faced a heavily escorted convoy, he had 2 choices. Wait for a better opportunity, or create one. Waiting meant the convoy might escape. Waiting meant Japanese troops would reach their destination. Waiting meant ammunition and fuel would reach enemy forces who would use it to kill Americans. Waiting was rational, defensible, safe. Cutter never waited. He charged into defensive formations. He surfaced in daylight to charge batteries. He tracked convoys for 80 hours when any other commander would have broken contact after 8. He turned toward destroyers instead of away from them. And he did all of this not because he was reckless, because he'd done the math. Submarine commanders who hesitated lived longer in individual engagements, but died in ambushes they never saw coming. They survived the battles they avoided, but died in the battles they couldn't avoid. Aggressive commanders died more often in the battles they chose, but they chose their battles. They controlled the timing, the positioning, the terms of engagement. Cutter chose every fight, and won every one. The math was brutal, but clear. In 1944, the average submarine sank 2.5 enemy ships per patrol. Cutter averaged 4.75 ships per patrol. The average submarine had a 20% chance of being sunk on any given patrol. Cutter, 5 patrols, 0 losses. Because aggressive action executed with precision was statistically safer. This isn't a story about submarines. This is a story about a man who understood that the safest place to be during a fight is right in the middle of it, dictating terms, forcing your enemy to react to you instead of the other way around. Football taught him that lesson in 1934. Standing in ankle-deep mud in front of 79,000 people who believed the kick was impossible. The rational choice was to not try, to accept the tie, to avoid the potential humiliation of missing. Cutter kicked anyway. The ball sank 3 inches into the mud. He kicked through it. 10 years later, he applied the same principle 500 feet underwater, with 7 destroyers hunting him and batteries at 11% and the hull groaning below crush depth. The rational choice was to wait, to hide, to hope the destroyers gave up. Cutter surfaced anyway, in daylight, 50 miles from a Japanese airbase, because waiting meant death by suffocation and attacking meant a chance at survival. He always chose the chance. That's the lesson. Not about submarines or torpedoes or depth charges, about hesitation, about the moment when you have to decide whether to wait for better odds or create them yourself. Most people wait. Most people choose the rational option, the safe option, the defensible option. And most people live their entire lives wondering what would have happened if they'd kicked through the mud instead of around it. Slade Cutter never wondered, because when 7 destroyers hunted him, he turned around and sank their convoy anyway. That's what you do when you understand that fear is just information. That pressure is just another opponent, that the safest place during a fight is in the middle of it. You establish rhythm, find the beat, execute. In 2005, when Slade Cutter died, the newspaper gave him 4 paragraphs. Page 7. Football hero. A generation has forgotten this man, forgotten the 80-hour hunt, forgotten the 127 depth charges, forgotten the 19 ships and the 100,000 tons and the 4 Navy crosses, forgotten that he and men like him, Richard O'Kane in Tang Dudley Morton in Wahoo, Samuel Dealey in Harder, made it possible for 70,000 Marines to land on Saipan with enough supplies to win. Forgotten that every Japanese soldier who drowned in the Pacific was a soldier who didn't kill an American. Forgotten that submarine warfare in the Pacific was won by men who refused to wait for better odds. If this story touched you, if you believe men like Slade Cutter deserve to be remembered, share it. Not for the algorithm, not for the views, for the 46 men he brought home alive, for Virgil Digger Graves, who held his rosary at 500 feet and got to meet his daughter, for Fletcher Ashford, who learned that aggressive action beats hesitation and taught it to 3 generations of submarine commanders, for Everett Sparky Kincaid, who watched the batteries drain to 11% and trusted his captain to get them home, for the 1,200 Marines who didn't die on Saipan's beaches because the reinforcements never arrived, because the ammunition was on the bottom of the ocean, because Slade Cutter refused to break contact after 32 hours. Some things don't fit on headstones. 19 enemy ships sunk, 100,000 tons, second highest total in the Pacific, 4 Navy crosses, the 80-hour hunt, the moment he turned toward the destroyer instead of away, the decision to surface in daylight, the rhythm established before the kick. Those things don't fit on a piece of granite, but we can keep them alive in memory. We can remember that once a farm boy from Illinois who learned to play the flute became the deadliest submarine commander in the Pacific. We can remember that he taught an entire generation of submarine officers that the safest place during a fight is in the middle of it. We can remember that when the Japanese Navy hunted him with 7 destroyers, he turned around and sank their convoy anyway. We can remember that fear is just information, that pressure is just another opponent, that you don't wait for the mud to dry, you establish rhythm, find the beat, execute. That's the story of Slade DeVille Cutter, the flute player who became a submarine commander, the man who turned hunters into prey, the captain who brought 46 men home because he refused to hesitate. Some people spend their lives waiting for the right opportunity. Slade Cutter spent his life creating them. And that's why 80 years after his greatest battle, we still tell his story. Because the world needs to remember that the most dangerous moment in any fight isn't when the enemy charges you, it's when you hesitate to charge them. Cutter never hesitated, and neither should you.